Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Welcome to the Catholic Mama, where you'll learn how to deepen and defend your faith, find comfort as we share the vocation of parenthood, and learn how to raise your children confidently Catholic. I'm your host, Christine Mooney-Flynn. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Catholic Mama. I'm your host, Christine Mooney-Flynn, and thank you for joining me on this episode where I am joined by a Catholic blogger, mom, and co-founder and designer of Lilies and Loaves, which is a children's-oriented clothing company. This is Emily Malloy. Thank you so much, Emily, for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, this is fun because I follow, various people on Instagram, and you look for the really beautiful, design-oriented photographs, and of course, yours really caught my eye. So this is fun that we get to talk because we actually were kind of almost neighbors for a while.
I know, and I'm so sad that I missed you.
I know. I was only there for 9 years, but I was only Catholic for one, so I wasn't really on Instagram looking at women.
Okay, so it's not totally my fault.
No, it's not. It was me being off in the wide atheist world for a while.
Oh, no.
But Emily, yeah, so that was a very brief introduction. Would you mind telling a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So I live outside of Philadelphia, about 5 to 6 miles outside of Philadelphia, in a small town called Havertown. And I'm here with my husband, Timothy, and our 4 kids. Our oldest is Gerard. He's 5. And then we have Tommy, who is going to be 3 in a few weeks. And then we have Jane, who is 1.5 years and runs the show. And we have little new baby Chip, who is, when this comes out, he'll be 2 months old.
Wow.
Yeah. So we've been in our house for 3 years. And even though a part of me thought I would stay in Philadelphia proper to raise my kids, it just so happened that we moved and it was the right thing to do. And it's been such a blessing because I've been able to just make the most of maybe we live on 1/8 of an acre, which is so funny because I grew up in the country. And but it's such a joy to be out here, and we're never going to move. So went from country bumpkin to city girl to now suburban housewife, which I never thought I would be.
That's very funny. We actually just moved out of Chester County, which is, I don't know how many miles. It takes 40.
I grew up in Chester County.
Oh, really? What town were you in?
Cochranville.
Oh, wow. You really were out in the boonies.
Yes.
Okay. That's like the edges.
Yes.
Yeah, we were in Westchester.
Yeah.
And we wound up deciding to move because we wanted more breathing room, but we didn't want to go further out into Chester County. So we just moved to Wisconsin instead.
That's far west.
Yeah.
Far west.
Yeah. A little bit more space. But I never, when I moved to Pennsylvania, I didn't intend to stay. And actually, it's funny. I thought when I moved to Pennsylvania, it was a whim of a decision because I was living in North Carolina. I grew up in North Carolina, and it was a whim of a decision to move up there. And I realized almost immediately that maybe it was a mistake. And I was like, I think God. This is before I was kind of spiritual. It's I think God sent me to Pennsylvania to punish me. I was so miserable. But then I realized that he actually had this wonderful plan, and I met my husband there, and we had 3 of our 4. I'm pregnant now with our 4th, and it's been much better than it was at the beginning.
Until you found Wawa, and then you're like, maybe I'll stay.
That is hard. The 2 things I miss now, because we've been away for 3 weeks only, is Wawa and Wegmans.
Yeah.
It's really great. For anybody listening, Wegmans is a really nice, it's a huge grocery store. It can be overwhelming, but there isn't anything quite like it here. And I haven't found my grocery store yet, and I'm a little sad. It's the one thing. Yeah. When you have to bring 3 kids to the grocery store, you want it to be somewhat of a nice experience.
Yes.
I haven't found it yet, but we'll see. I'm glad to hear that you have. It makes me feel like I can do this because I'll have a newly turned 6-year-old down to then a newborn when this baby of mine comes out. So how is life for the last month and a half with 4?
Oh my gosh, it's been so humbling. Well, it's always humbling when you bring a baby home. And I still mean it to stay. The hardest was going from 0 to 1. It was the biggest shock to the system. And 1 to 2, I was the most intimidated. I remember almost like having the shakes, thinking about my husband going back to work and 2 kids and, I just have 2 legs. How's this going to work out? Am I going to have 1? And then when it came time to bring home the 3rd, I was like, well, it can't get any worse. And then with Chip coming home, what has ended up being humbling is he's colicky. And I haven't really had one of those yet. So it's added an interesting dynamic to sort of the home life. But I think, we figured out a plan with him and, figured out what makes him happy. And I think now the dust is settling.
That's good.
And we're getting ready to go into summer, which at first gave me a panic attack thinking like, oh my gosh, nobody's in school. How am I not going to kill anybody? How are they not going to kill me or each other? And I think I'm actually going to really be looking forward to the lack of structure and just telling them to, I kick them outside anyway. And we've really worked to try to make our backyard just like an oasis for kids to explore and be. And just really doing that on top of a slip and slide and just say like, go and just be, they have a little dirt box, which I haven't really shown on social media, but maybe I should show because my boys don't fight when they dig in the dirt. It's honestly the weirdest thing and the greatest gift. And so we, instead of having a sandbox, we have a dirt box and they dig and they have trucks and they build mountains. And so I think it's going to be a really dirty, gritty Belco summer and it's going to be wonderful. So, I'd say the best advice to number 4 coming home with, being in the trenches with so many little kids is just bottom out your expectations. And when everybody's alive and healthy and quasi happy at the end of the day, like that is a massive success. And so I
remember the first 6 weeks of any baby can be pretty overwhelming and tough anyway, because everybody's getting used to the new dynamic. Mm-hmm. But when my first was born, he was born in the fall and we had all winter. It was just the 2 of us. We had all winter to snuggle and to stay warm. And then my other 2 babies were born in the summertime. But we had to go through the whole winter without being able to get inside because as a newborn they're not really paying that much attention to weather. But now I'm wondering because this now number 4 is going to be due in the fall as well, and we have all 4 kids will just be inside in a Wisconsin winter, so I'm a little nervous about that. Although I will say we'll be living 2 blocks to anywhere from 2 blocks to about a minute and a half from any family who could maybe help.
So definitely.
I can go over to somebody else's house and play in the snow. And I will say that I noticed in Pennsylvania, it seems like everybody just get through the winter so that you can get to the shore. Just get through.
Totally.
Right. Yeah. And here it seems like there's a winter culture. Like they actually embrace winter. They do wintry things. And so maybe we'll become winter people, or we'll just stay inside. I'm not sure which.
Well, I am a winter person. So, I will definitely be envious because I am my happiest when I'm sledding or in the snow.
Oh, really?
Cold. Yeah, totally. That's totally my happy place.
But you still love the shore. I saw you posted about the shore.
Yeah. So we just went down for the day.
Oh, you did?
That was so nice.
Was anything open?
Oh my gosh.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, everything. So that was great. And my husband and I were talking, trying to figure out how often we go down and that's just the beauty of being where we are. Is just, you can make a day trip out of it, which is so nice. And,
excuse me. That only takes, I'm trying to think, it took us like an hour and a half. So it takes you an hour maybe?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's so quick.
Yeah.
Well, I got Lake Michigan now. I don't know about much of that, but actually where we live is called Lake Country. So
Oh,
there's
wow.
tons of lakes and lake things to do. So we'll become lake people more than ocean people, I guess.
Yeah.
We'll see. So besides raising your 4 kids, which I know you have so much extra time from all of that, it seems like from everything on Instagram, you're very you look for the beauty, right? So beauty, goodness, and truth are the main kind of categories of the Catholic faith. But you really just your eye for design, the flowers. Again, we were just talking that before I hit record. You seem to like to have this real eye for beauty and design. Was this always the case?
Funny conversation. I was chatting with one of my, so I'm a convert to the faith like you. And I have one girlfriend who I call my Catholic big sister. She's who I always would turn to with random questions. I was chatting with her and she said that she described me as her artistic friend to somebody else. And I cackled really loud. And she just kind of, looked at me startled. And I said, if you went back to my high school and said to any of my friends, Emily, the artistic one, I think they would have laughed in your face because I self-identified as a jock and I was a jock and I ended up playing field hockey in college. And I just I always was playing sports. And I remember loving art and taking those classes, but thinking sort of having actually a very utilitarian approach to life of that serves no purpose. That's not going to get me to have a really good job if I take, this art class or that art class. And I did allow myself one class in high school to do ceramics. And it was I felt so myself and I really looked forward to it. And I was a musician and that was about the only things I would let myself do. I played instruments and I sang. But other than that, I was I didn't want to make time for art, even if deep down I really loved it. And, fast forward to being a married lady, as a paralegal, working in one of the skyscrapers in the city and just feeling dead inside and knowing that it wasn't it. And even though, I had hopes for law school and I just, the closer I got to applying to law school as I was graduating from college, the more I realized that I was forcing it. And I didn't know. So I just decided to just hang tight. And, toward the end of my senior year, I had an internship with a firm and I just stayed on and just kind of, waited to see and kept working. And then I started a food blog and that changed a whole lot. And I mean, it was super embarrassing at first. I was taking photographs on my Crackberry and it was a picture of this is what I ate tonight. It wasn't even here's a recipe. And my husband and I always laugh at that first photo that I posted, but I was so proud of myself because it was putting myself out there, which is something that I never did easily. And what I always loved is being an athlete, sort of doing finesse sports is that, you're a part of a team. So sure, when you have the ball, you stand out, but on the whole, it's about everybody else. And same with music, right? You're blending in. But the thing about most art is it's so vulnerable, and just being creative. So I just really, got into the food blog and slowly got myself better. My husband bought me a really nice Canon as a gift. And, that was a game changer and doing, recipe development and all that kind of thing. And then I caught the eye of Wakefern, who is the parent company of ShopRite. And they brought me on as one of their food bloggers. And I started doing that. And that opened a whole new chapter and a new door to my life. And I started doing that and it was such an outlet for me. Not a great witness to what it is to be a good employee, but I spent a good portion of my 8-hour day instead of, writing drafts to lawsuits. I was, writing my food blog. and then finally I was like, I wanted to do something with it. I didn't know what. I just wanted to do something creative. And a girlfriend of mine who had a flower shop 3 blocks away, had posted on Facebook that she wanted to bring on her first employee. And I remember just thinking, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. And I thought, I'm really going to take my social media, and this is before Instagram, or Instagram is kind of new, but I wasn't on it yet. And I thought, like, I'm going to take my blogging know-how and, my food photography skills that I've developed and somehow equate that into flowers and, really learn under her. And there was a whole bunch of us interviewing, and I almost didn't get the job. It was, down to me and this other woman who was a producer for Martha Stewart and the gardening. And
Oh, wow.
and my girlfriend was so sweet, like just brought us both on. And
Oh, wow.
it ended up working out that I ended up staying long term. But she really brought me under her wing, and it really was a true what's the word? When you bring somebody on under you. And,
Internship? Like that kind of thing?
Yeah, but
or apprenticeship?
Apprenticeship. That's the word. We're going to blame Chip on that one.
That's okay.
Good. So it was a real apprenticeship. And at first it was like, okay, well, all you're allowed to do is clean flowers, and the flowers would come in from the farms, from the suppliers, and, the roses would have all their leaves and thorns, and, and everything was very raw, and it was all about cleaning them and really kind of starting there and sweeping the floors. And I remember the first flower arrangement I ever did. And I just thought, wow, I thought this was so great.
That's
and
awesome.
Then shortly thereafter, it was Valentine's Day. And it was mayhem. And she was like, you're going to have to rock and roll and, start figuring out how to do this. And I'll never forget the first bouquet I ever made. And it was like all these peachy pinks. And it was for a guy named Isaiah for his wife. And it was a $70 budget. I mean, the things you remember. And I just remember thinking, like, this is it, this is me, and how I had been running from myself for so long. And I stayed at the shop for 5 years. And while I was there, it just exploded. And my friend Picha just like took this thing from, barely scraping by in the beginning to now they own their own space. And those who know like anthropology or terrain, it is very much that aesthetic and feel, and it in East Falls, and it's called Vault and Vine, and they just such beautiful work, and just to be sort of a part of that was so beautiful, and to train under her, and that opened the door for me and turned me into a creative, or I guess showed me that I was a creative, and I hadn't really realized that before. And in hindsight, I always had the greatest joy singing or, playing music or, doing any of those things. And it just made me then also realize who God is, and that God is beauty, and that just the joy that comes into the world of people, of yourself, in beauty and through beauty. And it makes sense because that is who God is. He is beauty. And particularly in those things that he has created. And, you look at a flower and you see all the petals and think, the intricacy of it, and how everything has to be just right for this petal to be that perfect and beautiful and that shade. And, to realize that the same God that created this intricate flower also made you. And it's just, such a humbling experience. And it's just been so much fun, kind of expanding from there. And then doing a lot of weddings, and it was a lot of fun. But then by the time I eventually scaled back to 2 days a week. And then by the time Tommy came, kid number 2, I was just doing weddings, and we were looking to move out of the city. And it was a hard decision, but it was once I made the decision to leave the shop, I had such peace, and I didn't realize that I was, kind of just caught up in a lot of, having your feet in two worlds. And it was really hard. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I am going to miss flowers so much. What am I going to do? And then I thought, like, I'm going to make my own flower shop in my yard. And once last year, we did a pop-up flower shop in my front yard. And I did all the flower arrangements and the boys did all the selling. And I told them if they would sell, that they could keep the loot. And I think they made like $50 that day from my little pop-up shop in our front yard. But just the joy that these, little arrangements brought people as they went by was just, it was intoxicating. And that's just kind of it, in a nutshell, is the joy that something you create brings to another is just is so uplifting.
As being somebody who is creative and likes to create, you get a small, very, very, very small glimmer of participation in the act of creation with God. So in a very small way, right? And I mean, He is pure love, and love is, you have to be joyful in that. So you get to witness just a very tiny bit of that, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. And I think, I'm a firm believer, and a part of sort of everything behind my Instagram, and, why I show things, and, I give a glimpse of just, real life too. Of just, the beautifulness of raising 4 kids, but also showing the importance of taking the time to create beauty and what it does to the home and what it does to the person, and particularly like as a mother. And I'm a really firm believer that, as we're created in God's image, and God is a creator, like we were created to create, and as we're made in His image, we're made to made, and there's just like a certain peace that comes in doing it. And, I really don't think I hit my stride in being a creative until I became a mom. And I think it was because, there's such chaos, and you have to let go when you're a mom. And, it's just total abandonment of everything that I had even realized, in my flower design, that, my will, was really trying to just, put the flower where I wanted it, as opposed to just like being and reacting and, letting the flower do what it does, or, letting, I had an Etsy shop where I did watercolors and embroidery for a while, and, just kind of letting it be and do and just see what happens, as opposed to being so neurotic and controlling. And, just to kind of see how things develop. And, that's kind of even parlayed into Lilies and Loaves, our business, and sort of my role in it as well is just total surrender and total letting go. Because every time I try to really assert myself in one way or another, instead of like, what's just organically kind of flowing, it just dead ends, or just doesn't work out, or, doesn't make sense, or whereas like when you just like let the Holy Spirit take control, it just flows, and it took sort of being broken in motherhood to realize like, what I needed to make and create and do. But also to realize that I can, and so my Instagram is all my hope is to at least convey that, like, I couldn't do anything 10 years ago. And just by trying and doing and letting go, if I'm capable of doing this, quite literally anybody is, particularly like making and baking and those kinds of things. I mean, my family has a running joke of the first time I ever made dessert for everybody. It was one of the first times my brother-in-law came home, my sister and he were dating, and I made Jell-O, and I guess I thought Jell-O expanded. I did one box of Jell-O, and I put it in an 8x10 casserole dish, and the entire Jell-O was like immeasurable, not even like an eighth of an inch across, and we had to scoop it out. And so, to this day, my brother-in-law Jason still makes fun of me about it. And when I'll like try to make a beautiful pie, like in the back of my mind, I'm like, Jell-O, and
our humble beginnings.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That literally like anything is possible. But and I know people say like, oh, I can't do that. I'm like, I bet you can, because I can. And if you even knew what I was capable of 10, 15 years ago, to the points of, my childhood friends laughing at the idea of me being artistic, like you can do it. Anybody can do any of it. It's just not being afraid to try, and also not being afraid to fail, because, you're going to make immeasurable Jell-O, just, trying and doing, and, you'll find your medium. Not everybody has the same medium. Mine just seems to be flowers. It's just, any way to make flowers. And
well, your pies and your breads are very pretty too.
Well, thank you.
You got that going for you.
Yeah.
And also, if you're not afraid to fail, which is a tough one, especially if you are on maybe a limited time or budget and you don't want to just completely eat what you're trying to do. It also, when you do fail even catastrophically or just in little ways, you start to stretch and grow and build your creative muscle. So you need to fail in order to, just think a little bit more differently and actually get something new done. You can't just, you can't all work out every time.
Oh, failure is such a gift.
It really is. It's hard. It's very difficult, but it is a gift. You're right.
Yeah. And I'm a real risk taker by nature. I have the scars and the, things to prove it physically. And I think it's kind of parlayed into other aspects of my life where I'm like, well, yeah, sure, I'll work in a flower shop. And I remember my parents thinking like, are you nuts? When I was like leaving a good paying job to go make minimum wage in a flower shop. And it put my husband was such a great sport. It put us in like poverty because it was still like the height of the Great Recession, and he's working in finance. And it was just like, okay, but I think in that risk taking, so like, for example, we got married at the height of the recession, and, my husband was like struggling to get like a good job that would pay him, enough. And then especially when I moved from the flower shop, our grocery budget was like $50 a week. Mm. And that's how I learned to bake from scratch. That's how I learned to do all these things, because I was like, well, I want this nice stuff, and the only way I'm going to have it is if I bake it. And, and that's gone into other things where it's like, well, I would really love beautiful embroidery, but I can't pay all the money, for these artisans, for their things. So I'm going to learn how to embroider, and like gardening. I'm like, I have literally no idea what I'm doing, but I am going to buy a pack of seeds. And if it goes wrong, it was only $2.99. And so that's, you obviously have to weigh the risks of things, and I'm just so thankful that my husband was willing to let me leave that good job and put us in, like $50 a week grocery territory, for a while, at the shop. And then, the shop like started doing really well, and, I stopped making minimum wage. But that trust that, that it would be okay. And, I always just jump. And I guess the most Emily story out there is I was 2 years old, and I stood on the top of my parents' steps going into the basement, and I leapt.
Oh my God.
And yelled Geronimo. And I hit the drop ceiling with my head and knocked myself out cold. And it took me a while to come around, and I have a dent in my skull. But the thing about that, and just like any risk taking, why I think it's good is because you realize it's not going to kill you. I guess until it does,
Yeah.
right?
Until you knock yourself out and don't wake up.
Oh, yeah, totally. My parents thought I was a goner for a little bit, but I'm okay. Well, maybe I'm not okay.
Maybe that's what put the creative gene. It shook something up in there.
Yeah, well, it removed some brain cells too, but maybe it removed just enough brain cells to
get out of the way.
Be afraid. And like I was, I tried to do a triple Lutz on rollerblades the, second week I had it and broke my arm, and I was like, well, yeah, that stunk, but it didn't kill me. Okay, keep going, and that's the thing. So much isn't going to kill you. It's not going to ruin you, particularly when you're taking these small risks, like baking something.
A seed packet.
Or a seed packet, or, buying a bouquet of cut flowers from Trader Joe's, say, and going home and arranging and trying. And it's like, if you fail, it's like, okay, well, guess what? You try again another time, okay. I make mistakes all the time. I forget to proof the yeast, and I'm like, oh, dagnavity. I did not use warm enough water or scalding water, and now I have the, like non-pizza, like not even non-pizza. No, there's nothing, leavened about this. And it's like, okay, well, we have sustenance for tonight.
It's Passover pizza.
Yeah, right. It may not taste good, but tomorrow's a new day, and that's been kind of the thing. And I do feel so lucky though, with Lees and Loaves that, everything has worked out. And I think that's only because of the Holy Spirit, sort of kind of guiding and, putting these ideas in my head, and, amazing Letty and Bridget, being like, yeah, or sometimes they're like, no, some of my ideas are, tempering me, where I'm like, let's run with this. And they're like, well, let's think about this. And, the risks there. And, obviously doing a startup, is a whole other level of risk, but so far it's been so worthwhile, because it's just been kind of amazing to see how people have been receiving it. And even in particular, like what's been going, like what we sell the most of, is the most surprising, because it was just kind of like what if we did this? Let's just give it a whirl. And it's like, these things like the dolls, which was kind of like, let's make like a pillow doll thing and make it out of jersey knit and make it really soft and squishy. And, we'll see. And it's like, I can't get over, like, we just, this is it's been a few weeks and it's the longest we've ever had them in stock. And I think actually beyond that, what is most tickling for me is the fact that Jane is so obsessed with hers, and won't put it down and won't go to sleep without it. And that's where I'm like,
cool.
Wow. At the end of the day, it's like, that's
right. You did something right.
About. Yeah. And like my boys love their Frazzati Henley, and they love wearing it. And it's, Jane would love her bonnet, and now it's a little small on her, but like little things like that where I'm like, wow, that feels good. And, just seeing the joy it sparks in other people, if they have their kids wearing it and, or, holding on to their little dolls, it's just, and it's not even just that it's something that I created. It's the beauty of evangelization and, just like what they're holding. And, and my love and hope is that, as Jane falls asleep snuggling her Guadalupe doll, that, she can realize that like Our Lady is with her and is there and is so familiar. And same thing with like the infant of Prague doll that we have, and, they're snuggling Jesus at night. And it's just, there's just a real joy in that. And, yeah.
I just finished recording for this week's episode, an episode about how to talk to your kids about God. And part of it was kind of a silent evangelization where you just, bring bring this sort of stuff into your home, because they're conversation starters, and then your children get used to seeing these things and having it part of their lives. And what better thing to do than to snuggle up with Mary or Jesus at a young age. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So it becomes subconscious, I would hope. And familiar, but hopefully not too familiar,
Right.
obviously, but, and that there would be like a real, joy and love. And there's a lot more for Lilies and Loaves, coming that, will sort of have that, impact, for children, like real empowering, and, real empowering nature of what we're putting out. And, but we had put out on Lilies and Loaves, because there's so many great ideas of like more dolls to do, because we're like, oh, you know what? It's so much fun, as we expand in our garments and other things that we offer, like let's expand in the dolls too, because it's just so easy to dream up and produce. There's no, you don't have to do any real design as far as like garment,
Right.
having drafting patterns or going through sort of the trial of production with that. It's like, okay, it's this shape and we polyfill like we know. And the votes, it was really hard for me to narrow it down to like 9 for people to vote, and JP2 won because he's just the cuddliest, without being like, demeaning, but like, is there anybody that seems more cuddly,
Right.
than him? And then, I think St. Michael got second after that. Which I thought, that could be a pretty cool one. You're going to bed and, you're snuggling.
I gotta tell you, my almost 4-year-old daughter is, I think because of all the changes of moving and everything, she's having some nightmares. And, but I was like, we prayed together. She was trying to go to sleep 2 nights ago, and said, let's talk to your guardian angel and ask that, you have nice dreams. And he's like, oh, St. Michael is mine. And I was like, that would be great. Then she could snuggle St. Michael. That would probably, maybe at least, maybe she wouldn't have bad dreams, but
so there's that, and a lot of other ideas without giving too much away, of things we want to have done. Our goal is in fall, have something released that would be even that I think your daughter would go nuts for.
Very Well, that's awesome. I think we have to wrap up. Unfortunately, this is really great because I appreciate. I know on Instagram you get all the curated, beautiful things, but I don't always get to talk to the people who make them. And I really appreciate all this because I do. Beauty is such a huge part of our faith. That's why. Our churches should hopefully be very beautiful because it draws you. It takes your senses away just from the everyday humdrum. And brings you to something a little bit higher.
Everybody's hungering and thirsting for beauty.
Yeah.
And looking for it in all the wrong places.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it, I mean, we touch a lot of synthetic materials throughout our days. We're not really touching natural materials anymore. And I think that's part of it. We see these very beautiful flowers or embroidery or a painting, and we crave all that because we're not getting it anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my husband and I are very big. So like most of our house is very natural and wood and ripping up the carpets and, you just want to feel natural things. So like, even like, we pray with like stone rosaries and wooden rosaries and just like the natural material and just like how impactful that is. It may seem so simple, but like I would recommend if you don't have a wooden rosary, get one. Or, if you have the ability to get like a stone, rosary, I have one from Medjugorje, and it is just like, I don't know, it's like you're connected to everything. It just is, it's super powerful. And you're right. Like dealing with the synthetics all day. It's just, my kids, it's, for the most part, I only want them playing with wooden natural materials because for that same reason of just there's something about it.
Yeah, and the kids love it. They can tell a difference from my experience with my kids. I think they can tell a difference. What I was going to say. Oh yeah, my rosaries get misplaced, and so my husband has a wooden rosary, and I was using his, and I got to say it was definitely a different feeling than my plastic bead ones. I need to rethink what I use, I guess. Although I had a really wonderful rosary that I really liked, and it was in my pocket, I think in my coat pocket, and my youngest got in there. I think my debit card was in there because they both went missing around the same time. And I was hoping when we packed up to move, I would find it, but I figured it just wound up in the trash at some point. She was cleaning out my pockets for me, which I guess I'd appreciate somewhat. But she could clean out my minivan.
Yeah, great. Really. I know.
That would be more important than my pockets. Well, thank you, Emily, so much for joining us. I'm going to put Lilies and Loaves and where to find you on Instagram, the Emily Malloy. I'll put all this stuff in the show notes.
Wonderful.
Is there any last words that you want to share? Or
yeah, I mean, I would just say your homework, everybody, for this week is try to make one beautiful thing. And and see what it does to your home. If you can include your kids, even better. Just make one thing. Either draw a picture, pick a single flower and put it in a cup, or just see what it does to your spirit and your home.
I like that.
Yeah,
start small. I was thinking about that when you were talking about the risk taking. That it for people who are risk adverse. I mean, it doesn't have to be quit your job and move to a tropical island and, I don't know, sell mojitos or something. It can be
I married a risk-averse person, so.
That's very impressive that he let you keep, or he was supportive.
That's where it's like, it obviously was the God thing. He was just kind of like, okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I worked at QVC for 8 years.
Oh, nice.
And I spent, when you said that you spend a lot of your workday time doing other things, I'm right there with you. And I always craved, homemaking and making beautiful things and touching things with my hands, getting them dirty, whether it's with, sticky dough or dirt or something. And I really struggled all those 8 years, because you could do it at home when you got home, but I felt like there was a piece missing still. So I'm very happy. And it was funny though. I was like, why can't I quit now? And it was, after each of my kids were born, I was like, this is a great time. And it never felt right. But then as soon as we converted to Catholicism, everything just fell in line. I finally, I learned about I'm blanking, Memorare through the RCIA process. And I started praying that. I'm like, Mary, I really want to be home with my kids. I want to do this stuff. And within like a few weeks of me praying that, I got a freelance gig that I could then do part-time at home, and I could quit my full-time job. And actually it started moving, but I apparently had to convert first.
Yeah. It's
God was saving up that stuff for me, which I'm very glad, actually, looking back, because the other times I don't know what I would have been trying to do all of the beautiful things without a grounding in the purpose of it.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense.
So true.
Anyway, Emily, thank you so much for joining me. And listeners, I will put everywhere to find Emily on the show notes. You should follow her on Instagram, because it's a lot of fun to look at, and it really is beautiful. So thank you again, Emily.
Thank you.
All right. Until next time, everyone. Don't forget to head over to thecatholicmama.com to get your free copy of How to Talk to Your Kids About God. This handy little ebook will teach you how to broach the topic of God with your children, or how to respond to your kids when they want to talk about God, as well as give you answers to 7 of the trickiest questions about the faith that Christian parents face. You'll love the easy to understand grown-up answers, the pared down but not talked down answers you can share with your kids, plus recommended resources if you'd like to deepen your understanding of the topic. Get yours free at thecatholicmama.com.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.